All right, let's spin up some of this lovely ray fiber. And just a refresher, ray is a Gotland BFL Wether. I'm going to start off with some blue BFL, and I'm going to use it as markers between the different preps. All right, apparently the first thing I have to do is oil my wheel. 1 second. So here I have some white lithium grease in an aerosol can. So I will just spritz some on there and spritz some on there. Now I use lithium grease because you can use that with plastics and it won't harm them. Let's see if this solved our squeaking issues. Much better. Listen to your wheel. When it says I'm thirsty, give it some grease. All right, so we have our start of blue. Our first prep is going to be our drifting apart roving, because there is really not a lot of grip in this. And I suspect it will want to spin pretty thin. Well, not too bad. All right, let's do a bit of a plyback sample and see what we're working with here. Ooh, pretty. Now there's some dark fibers in this fleece mixed with the white to give it this overall gray, but it's also giving it like a tweedy look. Tweedy? Heathered look. So when you've made a pigtail and it doesn't want to release, pull on the end of the pigtail and it will let go. All right. Now, I don't want this to turn into rope, so I'm going to do it fairly low twist. I'm fighting my uptake here, so let's take that down a little bit. There we go. If you take any silky fiber like this one and you spin it too tight, you're going to turn it into rope. It'll take all the soft and silky out of it, and you're just going to end up with like really tightly spun, no hand rope. So I'm keeping the twist relatively low. And I'm really struggling in the draft here because it is so silky that the roving just wants to drift apart. So kind of keeping it together is not great. This would probably be one that I would diz, so it kind of compacts those fibers and keeps them together a little better. By just hand pulling it, they're just sort of lying beside each other, but they're not like compressed into a roving. So I would recommend, if you want to spin something like this, comb it and spin it worsted, definitely diz it off your combs to help with that compression. Here's our second one. Now, it will spin thin relatively easily. I'm trying to keep it a little thicker, but the shine on this is gorgeous. I think it would dye just fantastic. Anytime you have a new fleece even if it's a breed you've spun before, because every sheep is a little bit different. Doing some sampling like this can tell you things that you thought you knew and it turns out you don't know. You could discover a lot, and it doesn't take long to do some quick sampling. I'm doing a fair amount so I can do a knitted swatch, but you could just do like a roll egg and a pull off the hand cards, just to give you an idea of how it's going to behave. I'm not a big sampler, so I'm enjoying the fact that I'm forcing myself to sample for these videos. And it's really reminding me why sampling is recommended, because it really does tell you a lot about the fleece and about how you'll want to spin it for the most enjoyable experience. Now, if you are spinning for a particular weight or yardage or whatever, you definitely want to sample to make sure that you're hitting your mark. If you're like me and you just spin it and let it be what it is, well, this can also tell you how to have the most relaxing spin and how to really enjoy working with the fleece, which is ultimately my goal, is just to enjoy the experience. I'm not spinning for any particular project or reason or anything. I just enjoy spinning. So I'm always looking to figure out the most enjoyable way to spin it. So again, probably sampling is a good idea, but we know how I am with the rules. I'm like, eh. Sometimes I listen, sometimes I don't. So this is a good way for me to have to do sampling. Let me just grab a bit of blue here. That will be the end of our roving, our comb top. Next, we have our pretty pathetic looking roll eggs. I suspect we're going to have a problem with them drafting apart, but again, this is why we sample, so we can find out if what we think is actually true. And I'm going to double draft a bit. This is actually drafting a lot better than I thought it would. So again, a good reason for sampling. I had suspected that these roll eggs would just drift apart. And well, they are, because I'm pulling too quick. So I'm just going to slow down a bit on my draft. Let a little more twist in before I draft. But it's actually spinning quite nicely. All right, let's have a look at apply back sample for this one. Does have that lovely heathered look. And it's not too uneven. It's got a very nice hand to it. All right, so I'm happy with the amount of twist. And again, I have pigtail, doesn't want to let go, so we just pull on the end. You do have to have it under tension for that to work. So I'm going to increase my uptake a little bit because I'm getting pretty low. This is definitely coming out furry, which I enjoy. I love a halo. Nothing like a good halo. It's the only halo I'll ever have because I'm not angelic at all. Oh, speaking of angelic, it looks like the Supernatural convention in August is going to go through. I'm so excited because I have tickets. Gold, of course. So I'll be going to see the guys again and see my Castiel and my Dean and Sam. Because, you know, Supernatural is everything to me. As anybody who's watched for any length of time knows, my entire house has supernatural stuff everywhere. My husband named my cell phone Dean because it was always making noise and I was always fondling it. It's like, okay, honey. So it's traditional that my cell phone is called Dean. So every time I get a new cell phone, I have to have a new version of Dean. Thankfully, it's supernatural and there's like a million different versions of Dean. All right, so that's the end of our roll eggs. We'll add in a bit of some blue so we'll be able to differentiate when we change preps. So now we have our flicked locks, which I am going to spin from the butt. Let me just adjust my hook here. All right. Now, if you find that you're having a hard time thickening up your singles or that it's slipping through on you, try reducing your uptake because that can be pulling it out of your hands before you're ready to let it go. And by taking the pressure off, you can, I took a little too much. You have more control over what you're doing. Always practice with whatever tensioning you have, whether it be double drive, Scotch tension, Irish tension, whatever it is. Always practice with it so that you get a good feel for what happens if you increase or decrease your uptake, because it does make a very big difference in your yarn. As you can see, now that I'm not fighting to keep the single from flying onto the wheel, I can draft, make sure my diameter, my grist is about right before I let the twist in. Whereas if I'm fighting the uptake, then I'm always like trying to hold it here and trying to, and I just need an extra hand. So by lowering the uptake, it allows me more time here to control the yarn. All right, we'll grab a little bit of blue fiber here. And that's the end of our picked locks. So we have one more prep left, or sorry, our flicked locks. Flicked with an F. And we have one more prep left, and that is our picked locks with a P. And this is our picked locks. So it's just basically a cloud. So you just let the twist into the cloud, draft back like you would with the roll egg. The difference being you don't have a roll egg, you just have a big handful of fiber. So you can just like mush it around and then fix it by double drafting. Pick out any of your veggie matter. Ooh, that's way too thin. So we're going to reattach. But don't expect spinning from picked locks to ever be a smooth yarn. You can certainly fix some of the consistency issues as you draft, but this is going to be a texture yarn. Now, of course, my favorite way to spin flicked is to cordless core spin. So grab a bit of fiber in your left hand, bit of fiber in your right hand. Now as you spin, you're making your core with your left hand and you're letting the fiber wrap on with your right. And this is my absolute favorite way to spin picked locks. And it doesn't have to be a thick yarn. You can make it fairly thin. But it is going to definitely bring out the chaos traits. And it is going to be a textured yarn, which I don't mind in the least. As we all know, chaos is my life. All right, there we go. And we'll just spin that last little bit. We're going to add a bit of blue on the end. Now our singles were spun S or counterclockwise, so we're going to ply Z or clockwise. So first thing we do, charge up our leader. So here we go. Here's our first one, picked locks that I have spun chaos fashion. Now normally I wouldn't chain ply this because it's going to make it uber fuzzy, but I'm okay with that. I have to hand wrap it on. You guys can't see very much from where you are. There, that's better. Okay, there we go. So this is so here is our picked locks. Oh, I love that. I know it's thick, but it's so soft and silky and fluffy. So here's a more conservative picked and then spun and chain plied. And that makes a lovely yarn as well. But this is where my heart is happy. It's crazy, right? But everybody has their favorite. Nobody's right or wrong. It's just what you prefer. All right, so that's the end of our picked locks. We didn't do much of that. So this is our marker that says we are now switching to our flipped locks. All right, let's have a look at that. So here's our flipped locks spun into a yarn. It's quite lovely. It does have a bit of a halo. The colors are amazing. We're getting some lighter and darker grays in there. Very pretty. So flipped is not bad. My favorite so far, of course, is the picked locks coreless core spun because that's my jam. All right, so we're going to be changing preps again. So next is going to be roulags. And I am going to increase my uptake just a smidge. I like a really strong uptake when I'm chain plying, so I can kind of brace against it. All right, these are roulags. All right, let's have a look at these. It's making a very nice, plump, squishy looking yarn. It's got a bit of a halo. Very soft. I actually really, really like the roulags. Once they're plied, they're freaking amazing. It makes a very lovely yarn. Now, see, I wouldn't have expected that with this fiber. So by doing some sampling, I'm discovering something that I thought I knew and didn't know. I would have thought it would make lousy yarn from roulags, and I am wrong. Like, look at it. It's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. I'm so wrong about that. So despite the roulags looking pretty pathetic, they actually spin up amazing. All right, color change. This means we are now switching to our combed top, the densest of the preps. So let's see how this looks. This is our combed top, spin worsted. Very pretty. Oh, this stretch right here, freaking amazing. It is gorgeous, as expected. It is not ropey, soft and silky. So that means keeping the twist low is imperative in the singles. It'll be interesting to see how all these swatch up. It's since my prediction on the Rolex was so wrong, now I'm wondering how are they all going to look in a swatch? Now, the nature of this fiber, I don't expect wet finishing to change it that much. It's not like huge crimp, it's more wave than crimp. So it's not going to activate that much, I wouldn't think. But again, this is why we sample, so we know. We don't think, expect, whatever, predict. We know. We're going to use our body naughty. That's what I'm calling it from now on. Our body naughty. To take this off of the wheel. All right. Oops. Take that off. So here is our BFL Gotland cross. And this is from Ray's Wether lamb. It is gorgeous. So we will wet set and swatch this and we'll see how it turns out. I'll see you in a bit. All right, here's our final result. This is for Ray's Wether lamb. And I knit up the swatch and it is beautiful. Now you can see in the roll egg form how the darker gray seems to come to the surface more. If you compare it to the worsted, which is just below it, the gray seems to pop more in the roll eggs, which is really interesting and kind of cool. So if I'm looking for a more heathered look, I would definitely spin it as roll eggs to get more of that dark surface. And I think in dyeing, it would make very interesting color combos. Now, in all of the preps, it gives really nice stitch definition. It's soft. It is a halo yarn. And this is the lock spun portion, and this is so soft and fluffy. It is amazing. Now I knit it on small needles, so it's very bunched up, but I think if it was lock spun and then maybe plied with a thread instead of chain plied, it would make a very nice textured yarn. So this is, I would call it next to the skin soft. Like, I'm not getting an exfoliation feeling from that at all. It's quite lovely. And the color is just freaking amazing. Like, it's such a pearly gray. And I'm definitely going to do some dyeing with this. Probably do locks versus, like, dye the locks versus spin it first and then dye it. Experiments to see how it turns out. And I think I might even do it in roll egg form to get that heathered look more, because I think that would be fun. So that's it for today, guys. If you like this, do the stuff down below, because I do stuff like this all the time. Thanks for joining me, guys. Dr. Chaos, out.